The damaged ship, the warning klaxons echoed through Titan Station's massive docking bay as Marcus Chen wiped hydraulic fluid from his weathered hands. 23 years of Starship maintenance had taught him to recognize trouble by sound alone. And the approaching vessel's engines were screaming distress. He squinted through the reinforced viewport at the incoming ship, noting the irregular thruster patterns and the way it limped through space like a wounded animal. The Aurora's Edge was a beauty, or had been before whatever happened to her. The sleek exploration vessel bore scars across her titanium hull that made Marcus's experienced eye narrow with concern. Those weren't the random pockmarks of micrometeorite damage or the clean burns of energy weapons. These gouges followed a pattern, radiating outward from several points along the ship's midsection as if something had clawed its way out from the inside. "Chen, you're up," came the voice of Dockmaster Reynolds through his comm unit. "Priority. Repair on the Aurora's Edge. Captain wants her spaceworthy in 12 hours. Marcus grabbed his diagnostic kit, the custom-built scanner array he'd perfected over decades of service. 12 hours for damage like that. What's the rush? Military. Priority. Don't ask questions, just fix the ship." The phrase military priority always made Marcus's gut tighten. He'd served his time in the Colonial Engineering Corps before becoming a civilian contractor. He knew what military priority meant. Someone important wanted something done quickly and quietly, usually without too many questions about why. As the Aurora's Edge settled into the docking cradle with a shudder that spoke of severe internal damage, Marcus approached the boarding ramp. The ship's captain emerged before he could announce himself, a woman in her 30s with the kind of alert eyes that came from years of commanding vessels in dangerous space. "Captain Alina Vasquez," she said, extending a hand. "You must be the mechanic, Marcus Chen. I understand you've had some trouble." Vasquez's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Asteroid field navigation error. Dense cluster near the Vega system. My pilot misjudged the approach vector, and we took multiple impacts before we could clear the field." Marcus nodded politely while his brain catalogued everything wrong with that story. The damage patterns were wrong for asteroid impacts. The energy readings his scanner was picking up suggested something entirely different, and most tellingly, there were traces of atmosphere leakage from areas that should have been sealed compartments. "I'll need access to all damaged sections," Marcus said, shouldering his equipment bag. "Of course, though I should mention, we're carrying some sensitive cargo, colonial survey data from unexplored systems. I'll need to accompany you through certain sections." Another red flag. In Marcus's experience, legitimate cargo didn't require escort supervision during repairs. But he'd learned long ago when to push and when to observe. "Your ship, Captain." The interior of the Aurora's Edge told a different story than Vasquez's asteroid field tale. The corridors showed signs of hasty cleanup, with fresh paint over what looked like claw marks in the metal walls. Emergency lighting flickered in sections where power conduits had been recently rerouted. Most telling of all, several hatches bore new welding marks, as if they'd been sealed quickly and permanently. Extensive damage, Marcus observed, running his scanner along a particularly scarred bulkhead. "The asteroids were larger than we anticipated," Vasquez replied, but her voice carried a tension that hadn't been there at their introduction. Marcus's scanner beeped softly, detecting energy signatures that made him pause. According to his readings, there were active life support systems running behind the sealed bulkhead. Atmosphere recycling, temperature control, even what appeared to be waste processing. Someone or something had been living in the spaces that were now welded shut. Captain, I'm detecting active systems behind this bulkhead. If there's pressurized atmosphere in there, sealing it off could cause structural stress during acceleration. Vasquez moved closer, her hand resting casually on the sidearm at her hip. Those are backup systems. Redundant life support in case of main system failure. Standard on long-range exploration vessels. Marcus had worked on dozens of exploration ships. None of them had life support systems in cargo areas. He made a note in his scanner's memory and moved on. But his suspicions were growing by the minute. The main damage site was in the ship's central hold, where something had clearly punched through the hull from the inside. The metal was bent outward in a pattern that reminded Marcus of flower petals, as if the hull had been pushed apart by expanding force. His scanner went wild with readings, detecting trace elements that weren't in any standard database. "This is interesting," Marcus said, kneeling beside the largest breach. "The metal composition shows signs of exposure to some kind of organic acid. Not corrosive enough to eat through the hull, but enough to weaken it significantly. Asteroid composition. Can vary significantly," Vasquez said quickly. "Rare mineral combinations, unexpected chemical reactions." Marcus nodded absently while his scanner recorded everything. The breach pattern suggested something had grown inside the hold, expanding until it broke through the hull. The organic traces were unlike anything in his experience, showing protein chains that didn't match any known Earth or colonial life forms. As he worked, Marcus became aware of other activity on the ship. Footsteps in areas that should have been empty. Whispered conversations that stopped when he approached. Most intriguingly, his scanner detected elevated carbon dioxide levels in several supposedly sealed sections, indicating the presence of breathing life forms. "Captain, I need to access the lower hull sections to properly assess structural integrity," Marcus said during his third hour aboard. "Those areas are off limits. Classified cargo storage. If the structural supports are compromised, your ship could break apart during FTL transition. I can't guarantee safety without a complete inspection." Vasquez was quiet for a long moment, weighing her options. "Fine, but I accompany you, and you touch nothing except what's necessary for your assessment." The lower hull access corridor was a cramped maintenance tunnel that ran the length of the ship. Marcus had to crawl on hands and knees, his scanner held ahead of him, while Vasquez followed close behind. The readings were stronger here, and he began to pick up what sounded like faint breathing from behind the bulkheads. That's when he found it, a section where the original hull plating had been hastily welded over what was clearly a large opening. The welding job was amateur work, probably done in space under emergency conditions. More importantly, his scanner detected artificial atmosphere on the other side, maintained at Earth normal pressure and temperature. "Captain, there's a pressurized compartment behind this panel that's not on any ship schematic I've seen. Emergency shelter," Vasquez said, but her voice had lost all pretense of calm. "In case of catastrophic hull breach." Marcus's scanner beeped with a proximity alert. Something large and alive was moving on the other side of the bulkhead, less than 2 meters away. The life signs were steady but alien, with a heart rate and respiration pattern unlike anything human. "Captain, I need to ask you directly. What are you transporting?" Before Vasquez could answer, a soft tapping sound came from the other side of the bulkhead. 3 taps, pause, 3 taps, pause, 3 taps. The universal distress signal. Marcus looked at Vasquez, whose hand was now openly resting on her weapon. The pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. The inside-out damage, the sealed compartments with life support, the alien organic tracers, the military priority repair order. They're not cargo, Marcus said quietly. They're passengers, and something went wrong. Vasquez's expression hardened. Mr. Chen, I need you to complete your repairs and forget anything you think you've discovered. There are forces at work here that are beyond your clearance level. What happened to them? Marcus asked, gesturing toward the sealed compartment. The ones who broke out. That's not your concern. But Marcus's scanner was telling him a different story. The atmospheric readings from the sealed spaces showed signs of distress, elevated stress hormones in the air that spoke of fear and confinement, whatever was behind. Those bulkheads was intelligent, frightened, and possibly injured. The tapping came again, more urgent this time. Then, to Marcus's amazement, the scanner picked up electromagnetic emissions in a pattern that resembled primitive radio signals. Something was trying to communicate. They're trying to talk, Marcus whispered. Vasquez drew her weapon. Mr. Chen, step away from that bulkhead. Complete your hull repairs and return to the station. Your work here is done. Marcus stood slowly, his mind racing. In 23 years of Starship maintenance, he'd developed an instinct for reading people as well as machines. Captain Vasquez was scared, not angry. Whatever was happening on her ship, she wasn't the one in control. Captain, if you're in some kind of trouble, maybe I can help. I've got security clearance from my military days, and I know how to keep secrets. For a moment, Vasquez's professional mask slipped, revealing exhaustion and something that looked like desperation. Mr. Chen, there are some secrets that can get you killed just for knowing them. For your own safety, finish your repairs and walk away. The electromagnetic signals from behind the bulkhead intensified, forming patterns that Marcus's pattern recognition software began analyzing. What he saw on his scanner's display made his blood run cold. The signals weren't random. They were mathematical sequences, prime numbers, and geometric patterns. Whatever was sealed behind those walls was intelligent enough to understand that humans would recognize mathematical communication as Marcus worked to complete the hull repairs. His mind churned with questions and possibilities. The Aurora's Edge wasn't just a damaged exploration vessel. It was carrying something that the military wanted kept secret, something intelligent and apparently imprisoned. The breakout damage suggested that some of these beings had escaped, but where were they now? His scanner continued, recording everything, storing data that Marcus knew might be the only evidence of whatever was happening on this ship. As he sealed the final breach in the hull, he made a decision that would change everything. Using his engineering access codes, he planted a series of microtransmitters throughout the ship's systems, hidden in routine maintenance nodes where they would be invisible to casual inspection. Whatever Captain Vasquez was mixed up in, whatever was behind those sealed bulkheads, Marcus Chen was going to find out the truth. The truth unveiled. Marcus returned to his quarters on Titan Station, with his mind buzzing with questions and his scanner full of impossible data. The electromagnetic patterns from the Aurora's edge were clearly intelligent communication, but they didn't match any known alien contact protocols from the colonial database. That meant either this was humanity's first contact with an unknown species or something was being covered up at the highest levels. He spent the next 6 hours analyzing the data, cross-referencing the organic traces with every xenobiological database he could access. The protein structures were unlike anything on record, suggesting a life form that had evolved under completely different conditions than Earth-based biology. Most intriguingly, The electromagnetic emissions showed patterns that suggested not just intelligence, but technology integration. Whatever these beings were, they could interface directly with electronic systems. The microtransmitters he'd planted on the Aurora's edge began sending data at 0300 station time. What they revealed made Marcus question everything he thought. He knew about the situation. The sealed compartments weren't just holding areas. They were sophisticated containment systems with life support tailored to alien physiology. Atmospheric mixtures that would be toxic to humans, but presumably comfortable to the inhabitants. More disturbing were the communication logs, the transmitters. Intercepted, military personnel were discussing asset retrieval and containment protocol breaches. Whatever had broken out of the Aurora's edge wasn't just missing, it was being actively hunted. Marcus made a decision that went against every survival instinct he'd developed during his military service. He was going to investigate further. Using his maintenance access codes, he began tracking the station's environmental systems, looking for anomalies that might indicate hidden life forms. What he found changed everything. The station's atmospheric recyclers were processing oxygen consumption patterns that didn't match the recorded population. Carbon dioxide levels in several abandoned maintenance sections showed signs of recent habitation. Most tellingly, the waste processing systems were handling organic matter that didn't match human biochemistry. The escaped aliens weren't just on Titan Station, they were hiding in the maintenance tunnels, surviving on emergency rations and recycled atmosphere. Probably terrified and possibly injured, Marcus gathered his equipment and began a systematic search of the station's lower levels. The maintenance tunnels were a maze of conduits, storage areas, and emergency passages that most people forgot existed. Perfect hiding places for beings who needed to avoid human contact. He found the first sign of habitation in Section C7A, storage area that had been sealed for renovation 3 months ago. Fresh scratches on the metal walls. Organic waste that his scanner identified as alien in origin, and most importantly, the same electromagnetic emissions he'd detected on the Aurora's edge. "I know you're here," Marcus said quietly to the empty corridor. "I'm not military. I'm the engineer who worked on your ship. I want to help." For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, gradually, the electromagnetic patterns began to shift, becoming more complex and focused. His scanner's translation software, designed for first contact scenarios, began identifying mathematical concepts and what appeared to be emotional indicators. The breakthrough came when Marcus began transmitting basic mathematical sequences through his scanner's communication array. Prime numbers, geometric progressions, and finally, the Fibonacci sequence. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The electromagnetic signals exploded into complex patterns that his scanner couldn't fully decode. But the emotional content was clear: hope, fear, and desperate communication. That's when she appeared. The alien didn't materialize so much as phase into visibility, like a hologram gaining substance. She was roughly humanoid, but clearly not human, with elongated limbs, pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer with its own internal light, and large eyes that held unmistakable intelligence. What struck Marcus most was how fragile she looked, like someone who had been running and hiding for too long. The scanner's translation software began working overtime as she communicated through direct electromagnetic manipulation. Slowly, haltingly, a story emerged that turned Marcus's understanding of the situation completely upside down. Asterisk. Her name translated roughly as whispering through stars. and she was part of a group of refugees from a distant system where their colony had been destroyed by a cosmic catastrophe. The Aurora's Edge hadn't captured them, it had rescued them. Captain Vasquez and her crew were part of a secret colonial operation to provide sanctuary for alien refugees. Operating without official government approval, the breakout hadn't been an escape attempt. During a solar storm that had damaged the ship's systems, the aliens' natural phasing ability had activated as a panic response. They had accidentally passed through the hull, not realizing that it would cause decompression. When they realized what had happened, they had tried to return, but the crew had already sealed the breaches. The real tragedy was that the military wasn't trying to rescue the aliens. They wanted to capture them for their phasing abilities, to study and weaponize what was essentially a defensive mechanism that activated under extreme stress. "Your people are in danger," whispering through stars communicated through the scanner. "The metal shell hunters seek us for war-making. We wish only to find the safe star's place." Marcus's mind raced through the implications. The colonial government was running a Black Ops refugee program, but military hawks had learned about it and were trying to turn it into a weapons acquisition project. Captain Vasquez and her crew were caught in the middle, trying to protect their charges while avoiding court-martial for unauthorized alien contact. "How many of you are here?" Marcus asked. 7 units of breathing together. Hide in the metal tunnels place. 3 units of breathing together were taken by the metal shell hunters. 7 refugees hiding in the station. 3 captured by military forces. Marcus checked his chronometer. The Aurora's Edge was scheduled to depart in 6 hours, supposedly, to continue its exploration mission. In reality, it would be carrying the captured aliens to a military research facility. The moral choice was clear, even if the practical implications were terrifying. Marcus had spent 23 years fixing machines, but now he needed to fix something more important. A situation where intelligent beings were being treated as weapons instead of refugees deserving protection. "I'm going to help you reach the safe star's place," he told, whispering through stars. "But I'll need your help to free the others." What followed was the most complex engineering challenge of Marcus's career, using the station's own systems against its security protocols. He created a series of cascading maintenance alerts that would require evacuation of key military personnel from the Aurora's Edge. Meanwhile, whispering through stars guided her people through the maintenance tunnels toward the docking bay. The aliens' phasing ability turned out to be the key to everything. They could pass through solid matter when stressed, but they could also phase electronic systems, essentially becoming living electromagnetic entities that could manipulate technology directly. Working together, Marcus and the refugees created a coordinated system disruption that made the Aurora's Edge appear to be suffering catastrophic system failures. The military team was forced to evacuate the ship, bringing their 3 captive aliens with them to prevent their escape. That's when Marcus implemented the final phase of his plan. Using his engineering override codes, he triggered an emergency hull breach simulation that sealed all sections of the docking bay except for the Aurora's Edge. In the confusion, the refugees phased through the station's hull and into their former home ship, while Marcus confronted Captain Vasquez in the chaos of the emergency response. "Captain, I know what you're really doing," he said, "and I know you're trying to do the right thing." Vasquez stared at him with a mixture of surprise and relief. "Mr. Chen, you've just committed treason against colonial authority." "No," Marcus replied, watching through the viewport as the Aurora's Edge prepared for emergency departure with all 10 alien refugees safely aboard. I've just remembered what engineering is really about. We build things to help people, not to hurt them. The Aurora's Edge departed Titan Station, carrying its refugee passengers toward a colonial world that had secretly agreed to provide sanctuary. The official reports listed the incident as a cascade failure, caused by interaction between alien technology and human systems. With no mention of intentional assistance, Marcus Chen returned to his work as a Starship mechanic, but with a new understanding of what it meant to be human. Sometimes the most important thing you could build wasn't a machine or a structure, but a bridge between worlds, a path to safety for those who needed it most. In the vast darkness of space, humanity had encountered something amazing, beings who needed help, and humanity had responded not with weapons or cages, but with engineering, ingenuity, moral courage, and the simple recognition that intelligence deserves respect, regardless of the form it takes. The stars were vast and full of mysteries, but Marcus knew that as long as humans could choose compassion over fear, the universe would remain a place of infinite possibility. Asterisk.